Good afternoon, all of you, and thank you for your time today to have a look at Dime.Scheduler. Thank you all for subscribing. I actually saw a lot of very familiar names on the attendee list, which is great. Just to set the expectations clear, today's webinar is mainly going to be a very high-level overview webinar on the most important features on resource scheduling and on project planning. It's mainly intended for fairly new resellers and their prospective customers, of course, but those of you who are already very familiar with the application and have gone through our entire certification courses might not see a lot of new features today, but you're obviously very welcome to stay. Maybe you will see features that you were not aware of, and obviously you will have the opportunity for Q&A at the end of this webinar. We'll start today with a short overview of the application, and then we'll dive immediately in the solution, where I will run you through a couple of scenarios. Okay, let's kick off. Well, most of you will know us by now. You all know that we are a ISV who is both a distributor for solutions such as the Continia solutions in Belgium, France, and Luxembourg, and we also develop our own solution, Dime.Scheduler, which obviously is the purpose of the call today. Development happens entirely in-house with our own staff. The vast majority of those are old ex-NAV consultants. We're headquartered in Belgium. We never do contact end customers directly, but we always work through the partner of reference, obviously, wherever they may be located. And today we're going to have a look at Dime.Scheduler, which is obviously that graphical plan board solution, which is running from any browser to access visual information on what happens on the back end in your ERP. Now, Dime.Scheduler, it's an external integrated solution, sits on its own SQL Server database, and it ships with a standard connector for Dynamics NAV, all deployments, and Business Central, both on-prem, which we already have ready, and cloud, which will be released pretty soon. It's ERP agnostic, so it could actually integrate with any other backend ERP or line of business application, but we for now only ship it with the Dynamics Suite connector, but it can obviously be adapted to other applications if needed. We've built a fast track wizard within Dime Studio, which is added to Dynamics for a very quick and easy implementation. It's a guided setup that just guides you through some screens. And we also provide framework for your own development to make it very easy to make enhancements, to add new fields, to add connections to other tables or other entities which are not sitting in the vanilla framework or installation from Dynamics, of course. The industries that we are being used in, at least today, well, a vast majority of our install base would be both in field service and in construction and infrastructure, simply because out of the box we would tick 9 out of 10 boxes on any requirement sheet or any RFP or any RFI that comes from that field. We're seeing a lot more maritime, oil and gas, any project-based work, event management, basically any industry that has a lot of tasks and jobs that need to be scheduled and that may require on attributes or skills or certification levels or geographic zones, so which would be hard to plan just from a spreadsheet or just from a list of lines, obviously, in your ERP set. Now, when we look at the key features of Dime.Scheduler, the one that isn't featuring here now on the screen would be flexibility. Again, we're ERP agnostic, but we're also industry agnostic. We can basically be used anywhere. Anything can be a task. So that can be a service order, such as a repair or a maintenance or a critical breakdown that needs attention. It can be a production order. It can be an assembly. It can be a one-line job, or it could be a job with multiple lines or even an entire project. And anything can be a resource. So that can be your standard resources from your ERP, your workers, your field engineers, but you can also set up your vehicles if you want, maybe specify specific equipment that you need. It could be the room you're sitting in right now, the television screen you're looking at right now. So all of those can be pulled either from ERP, from NAV, Business Central, or you can just make them, create them on the fly on the front end in Dime.Scheduler itself. Now, the resource allocation would typically happen by dragging and dropping a task onto one or multiple resources. And by doing that, you're basically creating a instant bidirectional synchronization with your resource allocation lines in your backend application. We're really talking milliseconds here, so the update happens instantly. You don't have to run any job queues. You don't have to refresh your screens to see the updates. It happens in real time. Also, if you're working with multiple planners on the same application, you would normally not experience any lag that would make it hard to work with. So that's the drag and drop planning. An alternate way is using Gantt chart planning and having the resource allocation done automatically against the budget that is allocated to a specific job task. Now you will see that the application is extremely flexible in its user interface. You can duplicate any lists, so you can work with multiple open task lists, multiple pivot grids, multiple plan boards in case you want to segregate duties and responsibilities. You may have different business units or multiple countries or service zones where you have multiple planners. So you can actually set up specific dashboards, specific views for specific users or user groups or user roles, in which case they will only see a specific list of tasks that they need to plan or a specific filtered list of jobs or tasks that have been planned as you like. Now, to make the life of the planner easier, and to speed up the whole process of allocating tasks to a resource, we have some tools embedded in the application. The first one are the smart resource filters, which can be applied on region, zones, language, skills, certifications, yes or no, which will filter out your plan board and only suggest the resources that fit, obviously, the query that you have built with your filter. And there's also an integrated map that comes with the solution. And that map can visualize or geolocate any kind of addresses. Those can be fixed addresses, such as the customer address, the address where a specific task needs to be performed, the home location of a resource, the office location, but it can also be the real-time location. So we're also able to pick up GPS points and actually refresh that every second or every minute or every 5 minutes as you want by picking up those GPS coordinates for a mobile solution or from any hardware that may be installed in a truck or in a car, for example. Now, when planning these tasks on the plan board, you can use company-wide calendars, but you can also use resource-specific calendars or specific shifts in which people are working, morning shifts, evening shifts, night shifts. And the planner always has the ability to respect or to override those specific calendars. So you can actually enforce overtime if you want, just to make sure that a specific task is fully finished on a specific date, or to be sure that a project is not overrunning on time. There's also an embedded capacity pivot, which is very much similar to your Excel pivot, where you can just slice and dice within your data and see the allocation and load of your resources. This really can help, again, especially if we're looking at future time periods, to see what kind of resources are overstretched and what kind of resources are sitting on the bench waiting for work. So that can help you in your operational decisions to reallocate some jobs or just to move things forward or pull them in earlier. Now, while doing all of this, it's important to understand that the main business logic will still reside in your backend in Business Central. Everything, if you plan something on the plan board, it will sync back to Business Central. And if you have any conflict with any business rules that may have been set up over there, you can get an alert or notification in the front-end application to say that, no, you shouldn't plan this task because of error codes 1, 2, 3, ABC, which means that whatever you have been defined, of course. And obviously, as you would expect from a modern application, there is a advanced user setup where you can define different kind of users, user roles, user groups, user permission sets that you can apply. You can build your own. Actually, every single action that you can perform within the application has its own permission set, so you can mix and match to make your own user roles that you'd like to create. The application supports a multi-database, which means that you can actually pull those tasks from multiple different NAV or Business Central instances if you want. So we have multiple companies sitting on different databases. It's quite possible to send all of them to the same front end, so you have a global view of what's happening within the entire ecosystem. And then you can obviously again set up those filters to segregate tasks by business unit or by country that you want to obviously work with. The entire user phase itself actually is very easy to customize by just using your mouse, and to resize any component that you want. You can drag and drop them to other places. You can stack them in tabs next to each other, or just adjust the entire view as you want. This is an example of how a plan board could look like, with a section of open tasks, some resource filters, a map that will show you the travel time and distance between where your field technician will leave and where the customer lives, just a general allocation of a work weeks view in this case, a calendar to quickly navigate in between different times or time periods, and more detailed instructions of that specific job. But then again, we're going to show that immediately within the actual solution itself. So this is the way that we'd go around with drag and drop planning. The second way would be to use project planning, in which case you would typically first map out your entire project, which is a job that you're sending with multiple job tasks. And within those job tasks, you could have dependencies, you could have constraints, there could be deadlines for subtasks, there could be sign-off stages or milestones. While progressing to the product, you can actually follow up on your progress by percentage completion and see if you're on time or ahead of time. You can also run what-if scenarios if wanted, and also highlight a critical path to see what kind of bottlenecks you may have, or what critical phases of the project you cannot postpone, because that would impact the final delivery day of your project. So that would be a typical view that you may know from Microsoft Project, for example, where you have all these dependencies clearly set. You have your progress bar, and you can see the status as of today. And from here, obviously, you can then drill down from your task to the resource allocation for that specific task, again, using filters for that specific task if you want to. I'll show that immediately, how that works. Now, I talked about the implementation wizard. This is maybe a little bit technical, so I'll just go quickly over here. But it's very easy to set up. From Business Central, you're just being guided through a menu that asks if you want to pull your standard resources, what fields should be used for skill levels, for example. Do you want to send service orders, jobs, assembly orders, production orders, sales orders, and HR entities, for example. So it's just activating or deactivating, and that will define what kind of entities or tasks you actually are going to send. This is a nice one here to have, the enablement of your abscess planning, which will allow you to visualize your sick days, your annual leave, your days off that your staff has planned. Not only will it visualize on the plan board, but it also allows you to create those days on the front end. Actually, just to use your mouse to drag and drop holidays on a resource, and that will sync it back to the absence register in NAV or Business Central. The same goes for integration with timesheets. You can actually set that up on service orders and jobs, that the timesheets of the resources will automatically be pre-populated with whatever has been planned already in their diaries for that week or month. So that's also nice to have. Good. Well, enough with PowerPoint. Let's jump into the actual application and have a look at the look and feel of the whole thing. As you can see, I am now logged in from a browser. I'm using Chrome now, but it could be any browser that you prefer. Planners typically like a lot of information on the screen, so you can actually just always set it up in full screen mode. You can use sidebars here to access links or locations that you need a lot. For example, here service orders or jobs or HR entities within NAV, or any external links that you may use a lot. I'm going to show you how we would go around with planning service orders as a demo today, or just as an example on how we work with those. I see here in my open task that I already have a list of open tasks that have been sent from Business Central. So these have not been planned yet. So as a planner, it's my job, obviously, to allocate them to a resource and to make sure that they're being executed. Now, to organize my work, I can use any field from the customer card, or from that service order card, or from the job card which I'm sending, which may help me to organize my job if I want to sort, group, or filter on a specific field. Next to the standard fields which are available, we also have already a lot of free binary fields, free decimal fields, free date fields that we have already embedded in our connector. So it's just a matter of changing these field names to the specific field names and the tables where we can find your custom field that you have created, and it will just pop up here and it will be available to use for that purpose. So it's very easy to swap them around and to change the position of those if you want. So you can see if you want to make them longer or shorter, if you want just to make the entire window bigger, maybe even want it on another place. You can, as I explained, just make different kind of tabs, or you can put them next to each other. So it's just dragging and dropping as you like to organize your entire workspace. You can save those specific views then as your own preferred view. You can share it with others if you want, or you can assign it to a specific user role or user group as their specific default layout if they log in. Now, maybe let's start from the beginning, and let's start with the actual integration with Business Central. So let's go back a step and go into Business Central to create a new service order. I'm going to create one today. Let's call it webinar description for our good old customer 10,000. This is just a standard Kronos database. So we're going to the Canon group, and maybe we need to go and install a piece of hardware, and in this case maybe we need to go and install a extra monitor. Now I have created now the service order. I can choose at what time I want to send it to Dime.Scheduler. It could be simply when I click OK. Maybe I want it to depend on the status that I have selected from the Business Central side. I could just add a button in my ribbon here if I want, so I'll just send it manually here by clicking now on send. Okay, I've clicked on send, so it should be already available now on my plan board. You can see it's already here, so it's really a matter of milliseconds. And I'm seeing that for my customer, the Canon group, because I have now, as you can see, grouped nicely by customer. I need to go and install a specific piece of hardware, a 17-inch monitor. As soon as I click on it goes on the map to that specific field. Okay, it's not doing that right now. Looks like it's not geolocated yet. If I click on a customer, as you can see, my map normally immediately jumps to the location where I need to perform a specific. Okay, apparently he's looking at a customer now with an address in Pretoria, which is not maybe the best example. And I can see my surrounding resources. If I click on both, it will show me the travel time and the travel distance. I can even choose entire routes by choosing 4, 5, 6 pins. I can choose here what locations I want to utilize. Is it the home location of my resource? Is it the actual location if I'm tracking it by GPS? I can multi-select a whole bunch of pins in one go if I want, and in that case I could choose, do I want to select all my appointments to make a routing, for example, for a day? Do I also only want to plan open tasks, Or do I want to select all my planned tasks and maybe visualize them to see if I can rearrange my routing and make a shorter route, for example? So this is again something which is very handy. That may show me, for example, if I want to plan something for this customer, that I can immediately see what surrounding resources are there. I can see that they have different pin colors on my map. I can set them myself. Maybe I can set up for my resources in terms of their skills. Maybe I have functional consultants and I have technical consultants. Maybe I want to use different kind of pin colors. Maybe I want to use red, for example, for urgent jobs that need to be executed as fast as possible, or for critical breakdowns. Maybe there's a different business unit customer and I want to use that color. So that's all something that you can install yourself. And secondly, as explained earlier, we have those resource filters. If I look at my plan board here now, I'm seeing a global overview with all the resources that sit in my company and that I have enabled to visualize on my screen. So to quicker allocate them, because I may have hundreds of these in my company, I could say, show me the resources, for example, that are in the North region. And I need to install a monitor here that have at least a skill to work with computer accessories. And next to that, they may need to install some drivers as well. So they also need some basic PC knowledge. And maybe it's something that needs to run on a network as well. So we need some server and network knowledge. So I can build these filters myself if I want, and I can apply them on the plan board. And by doing that, you'll see that my plan board is getting reduced, maybe to only 5 or 10 people who would work in that North region, or who service the North region, that may have a specific language skill, that may have specific knowledge. I can save these if I want as a specific tab, for example, technical jobs, mechanical jobs, functional jobs, or jobs, resources in the North, resources in the South. So this is something I could do here to quickly make the allocation. Next to building that query myself, I can also simply just click on the filter on my task, and I will see that, as you can see, my query will auto-populate with whatever information I know already from Business Central, and it will automatically reduce my plan board to make sure that I have a good fit. Good. Now in this case, I know for a fact that Brenda here is a good match. So I can drag and drop and plan it, for example, here on Thursday afternoon. I can see that it disappears from my open task list, and it's now in my planned task list, which is another grid that I can open up if I want to. Now, by doing that, I have now created an appointment, as we call it, and I have set as a standard duration in my setup wizard that I always would schedule 1 hour. Now I have that bidirectional sync. If I would now drill back to my service order in Business Central, see, it will open up. And if I look at my resource allocation, I can see that I have now allocated 1 hour to resource 30, which is Brenda in this case. If 1 hour would not be enough, and I need it to be a little bit longer, and I'm going back to that card, I will see that it will update, and it will, if I refresh and hit F5 here, that it will show my 2 hour. If it's not only Brenda who needs to work, but I also need a Hendrik to go along, then I will see that it also will add Hendrik. As soon as I have done that, and I will change, they will keep in tandem and they will travel together throughout my resource allocation, as obviously is something I tended to do. I'm looking now at the work week. If I want to have a closer look, I could, for example, set it on a day view. then it's going to show me all the hours, and I could just for a double click on the 24th and I would see that allocation which I have here now. So I have here 2 hours for Hendrik and for Brenda. I can see a mark here on the orange mark which says I'm ignoring my calendars, which means it can allow to do overtime. My non-working time here is now visualized in pale green, and you can see it now allows me to work late or to work over lunch times if I wanted. If I would not ignore it and actually respect it, and maybe here assign something to Mary, it will show me a 1 hour, 2 hour block. You can see the auto extension. Let me show that a little bit clearer here. So I now have a duration of 2 hours, a 8:45 to 11:15. I can push it out until noon and it will not change. But if I would plan it over noon, you will see that the block auto extends with an hour, where now my working time is still 2 hours, but the duration is 3 hours because it's adding the whole lunch break time, which is a nice to have if this is something that you want to respect for your employers. But if you're on a Friday night and you have 15 minutes left on a job, and if you have been traveling 3 hours to go to that job, what you don't want is this happening. You don't want it to create an additional half an hour the next day or after the weekend, in which case you could say, right, for this specific job, I will ignore the calendar, and you will see it will allow to do that half an hour of overtime just to make sure that I have done the job in time. So this is just something small that we've added. Another thing that we've added recently in scheduling is the utilization of a recurring task. So I just want to show you that I can also take a task, plan it, for example, to Abby. I could now copy that task several times. If Abby needs to go for half a day, or maybe let's call it a full day, to a specific customer for the next 2 weeks or for the next 3 months, she needs to go there every day, or maybe she needs to go every Friday for an entire year. So I don't want to copy all of that activities over and over again, but I can actually set up a recurrence pattern in the same way as I would do it in Outlook. So I could say there's a repetition here, and maybe that's a weekly repetition, and it's every, for example, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday that Abby will go on site to that specific customer. And I want either to repeat it after a number of occurrences, or you could say, yeah, just it's from now until Christmas, for example, or for now, let's now just do it until end of month and save it. So if you set it up like this, it will now sync back to your backend. It will start creating all your appointments, and it will then automatically publish them, as you can see, on my agenda. Okay? So I've set it for until end of month. So you can see now that it has created 3 blocks this week and another 3 blocks for next week. So these are also linked to each other. And if you make changes, you can see here on the recurrence icon that this is actually a string or a series of events. I could choose to change an allocation and say, right, Abby's sick that day, so I will have her colleague do the job. You can also change, if you want, the color markers and say, this is another type of job, and then I will be prompted, do I want to apply this only for this event or for the entire series? In this case, I will only apply it to this event, but you can also choose to apply something to an entire series. If I delete it, is it only this appointment, or is it all of them, or all the future ones? And then you can see they disappear and they are off the grid again. So that's how it would work. Right, now about that colors, you can see a mishmash here of different colors, and you have lines underneath as well. This is something that you define yourself. We can set it up from the connector, or you can add more specific values that you want. So what we are sending here as a background color, in this case, it's the service order type. So is it, for example, software or is it hardware? Is it preventive maintenance, or is it an installation? Is it a system breakdown and an urgent repair? So this is what you can change here. And then as a second color marker, we have the line underneath. And here we pull this information from the repair status field now, from the service order card. But again, you can pull it from anywhere. If you would use Anveo or mobile nav or Servotion, any other mobile device where you're actually updating your jobs in the field, you could say, well, this is how it was planned initially, but now I am on site. Then you will see your color changing to green. You are working on it. Maybe you have finished that job and you are marking it as complete. Then you can change it as finished, and you can do that from here. This is typically something you wouldn't do as a planner here in the front end application. You can use it for anything as you want, but you can also use it to visualize again data that you pull into Business Central from mobile devices and reflect it here. Now, what more information do we show here on these task headers? This is basically a concatenation of merge fields. So it's just the fields that we pull from the service order number, the task number, the customer number, the customer name. And here we have in the body more merge fields on address and specifics for what exactly needs to be done for this task. Maybe we can want to send links as well on how to perform a specific installation or repair. Can be links to external SharePoint sites or anything, obviously. Here we see the resource allocation. You just saw me dragging and dropping in that with my mouse, but we can also just choose them here from any list. We can group them here by type again. So we could add a vehicle and say, well, I want Mary to take that specific vehicle. And that vehicle just will be added, as you can see, to the job. And as you already know, they are kept in tandem always. The full task details can always be viewed here, where you can pull up any information like warranty information, more opening hours, maybe contact details. You can choose to hide the fields which are blank and are not relevant. You can regroup the fields as you like. You can change the field labels to any field label source that makes sense for the specific business. And you can also choose to visualize them here at any time, the task details, and to always have that information available for you for any specific task. And again, you can choose where you put what kind of information. So this is a bit the specific flow that we normally are using for service orders. We see that helps a lot of businesses with their main requirements. And navigating, as I explained, it's just easy. Click on the first day, you click on the last day, and it will keep that specific frame. So you don't necessarily have to look at 1 week or 1 month. It can be 11 days, it can be 17 days, it can be 3.5 weeks, and then you can jump backwards or forwards with the exact number of days as you have specified in that example. Now this is a service planning. Maybe I want to log in as another user now. I will log in as a job planner. As you can see, logging in, I can do that just with a named user and with my email address and my password, or I can just use Windows Active Directory, so it's single sign login, or my Azure ID or my O365 ID. In this case, I'm just using my own credentials to log in now as a job planner into the same Kronis database. So I'm actually going to use the same information from my backend, but in this case, I'm not going to have a look at service orders. I will only look at jobs. I also have a different layout. There's other specifics that I use. I don't use a map in this example. I'm using absences here, which I haven't showed yet. And here I have now an overview of all my jobs. So I'm not seeing service orders here, but I'm seeing jobs. I'm seeing the jobs in total, group by job, with all the different job tasks. And I will start with planning my project first in time. So I will open it, and I will open it with the Gantt chart. I have now disabled drag and drop planning, but I have enabled Gantt chart driven planning. What is the difference? Well, as you all know, within jobs, you typically have budgets. So this is pretty generic information, but I have set up here that all my jobs here require 10 days. This is the number of days that you have sent from Business Central. I have the ones which are already planned, and I have the remaining. They will remain in my open task list until the full budget has been depleted, or the full 10 days in this case have been planned. Now, to plan them, I will open my project. Maybe I want to maximize this so I have a better view. And as you can see here, I have an overview from start to end for this specific project, but I can also open multiple projects at the same time if I want, and I can assess what's happening. I could collapse them. And here I have a main overview of my project. This is the day of today, and this is my overall progress. So I'm seeing that I'm a little bit behind here. It's this task mainly which is causing me to be a little bit behind. On the other hand, I'm seeing another task here where I'm a little bit ahead of time. So this is basically my average progression for all the subtasks and all their requirements and all their dependencies that they may have. Now let's open up again and see what we can do with all the project task module. I see here, for example, that I have specific milestones. I have other job tasks which I can change in time. So this is the first thing I want to do. I want to map everything out in time before I start allocating resources. I can use deadlines if I want. Now these deadlines are merely a visual marker. This shows me that I want to be done with painting and finishing the interior of this house that I'm constructing by the 10th of November. So I can still shoot it out in time. And if I would overshoot that, you can see that it still allows me to do that. This is just a visual warning. I could actually put constraints here, and this is what I want to do, is set an actual constraint on these tasks. I'm just double clicking and I'm going to an advanced constraint type. And I'd say that it must finish no later than, for example, and it was the 10th, I believe, of November. So it's now setting a hard constraint. So if I now want to overshoot it, it will escalate a constraint violation and tell me that it should finish the latest that day and ask me what I want to do. Do I want to cancel and leave and do nothing? Do I want to remove the constraint and totally ignore it? I wouldn't advise that. It's there for a reason. Or would I push out that task so it actually ends exactly on that day? So I'm pushing it out as far as I can. I can always have a look at my critical path. So my critical path will actually highlight the blocks in the sequence that will determine the end outcome, the latest day of the delivery of my project. I know that if I will change this task in time or another one which is not connected and has no specific correlation or dependency, that this is fine. So I can easily use these guys and put them on another job. Do this in September, for example. That's all good. But if I'm going to push this out with 1 day, I'm going to delay my project with 1 day. So again, this is very handy, especially if you have very multi-stage long projects that you work on. Now, unlike the real-time synchronization that we have with the drag and drop planning, now nothing is being sent back to the database as long as I'm playing around here, as I call it. So I'm basically doing a what-if analysis. I'm looking at what happens if I do that, what happens if I do that. For example, I have here a task which is split in two, which has a huge gap in between. And once I'm happy, I can push my sync button and it will update all my tasks in overtime. I can go back, I can go forward, so I can really play around here and see what happens until I'm really happy. Now, once I'm happy, I also want to allocate some resources to that project. So let's say I want to have my paint and finishes done. It's 18 days in this. Let's make it a little bit shorter. So if I want to populate that, I could go here to my resources tab and input them here. Or if I know by heart, I can just double click here on my resource allocation. And maybe I know it's going to be Jack who's going to be working on that full time. And maybe his friend Johnny is going to work on it, but not full time. Maybe he will only help half days and only work in the mornings or in the afternoon. Now, as I explained, this will now use the calendars, the very specific calendars for Jack and for Johnny that are allocated to them, to start allocating those 14 days, which I have now mapped out and fully depleted, and place the resource allocation in their calendar. So if I click on my sync button, it will now start creating full days for one resource, half days for other resources. And if I would go and look back to my resource allocation, so if I minimize this, sorry, I will see now, okay, I have here Jack and Johnny. Well, what time was this? October 18th. So I should see them popping up now on their agendas. It takes a while to calculate all those different blocks. Okay, there they are. So you can see now, maybe let's have a smaller time frame. Maybe let's have a look at this week again. So if I look at this week, I can see that Jack is now scheduled according to his calendar to work 4 hours in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon. Whereas for Johnny, as specified, he's gonna work half time. Now, all of those calendars can be set up, of course, in the backend application. You can have calendars that you set up throughout the entire company, where you have your generic days, 5 days a week, 8 hours a week. You have specific business hours that you can choose and set up. You may have day overrides or week overrides for specific holidays, for example. You can set up different kind of shifts, people who do the early shifts. Maybe you have people who work only on the weekends and who will work 12 hours a day on the weekend, and then they're at rest during the working days. So this is totally up to you how you set it up, and then you can allocate those to your specific resources. And with the drag and drop planning, yeah, you can actually make resource specific calendars and allocate them to named resources as well, rather than to an entire group of resources. Now, this is a bit the main overview of how we would plan something manually, or how we would do it by dragging and dropping. I've explained that we also can schedule absences, so you can just basically take a holiday, drag it onto Lin's bad example, and drag it onto Lin, and it will create the holiday. So not only will the planner here know that Lin is not available that day, but this is what will also populate the HR register in Business Central, so she will actually be marked if you're integrated with an external payroll management system. Also there, everything will be pre-populated for you, and you'll know how to work around. What I haven't shown now is my capacity pivot. Maybe I want to jump back to my service planner because I have a little bit more data in that environment, and have a look on what that can teach me, or how that can help me as a planner, especially if I'm planning way ahead for next month or for next 2 or 3 months. I can add a capacity pivot here where I could just set a specific time frame. Let's have a look at, for example, the month of October. Maybe I want to maximize this. And here, as you know from Excel, what do I want to see? I have now saved this specific grid as a capacity for my technical stuff, for example, actuals, my capacity and my load, and I want to group them by resource type, and then I want to see them by resource name. So I can actually open up these, and I can immediately see here that this all looks well at this moment for my technical staff. If I want to filter out the rest, I could, for example, set a filter on my label values where I could say equals or contain label filters. For example, my equals technical. So in this case, I'm only looking at my technical stuff. I'm filtering out the rest, and I can immediately spot here. I can save these obviously as a specific grid. I can immediately see here there's an issue here for Ross. in this specific week, I can drill down in that week, and then I will see that in this week the issues are on this specific day, for example. And again, I can just click to see what's causing this 106% allocation. Well, I can see that he's doing a 8.5 hour job, or in total a combined 8.5 hours, where he only has 8 hours. So he's doing half an hour of overtime. This is just conditional formatting that you know very well, that you can obviously adapt yourself. This is a bigger issue here on this day. He's actually planned for a 22-hour shift, so that should not be accepted or should not be possible. This is obviously because you have disabled the calendars and you have overridden them, but you may have exaggerated here a bit, and you want to take some of that work and shift it to somebody else. And the other way, obviously, you can see what people are really sitting on the bench and need to be given some work to make themselves useful, obviously. Good. Well, this is the main functionality I wanted to show you today. Other than that, I also am very happy to announce that unlike today, with having to work with a myriad of different manuals, PDF files, different Word files, we have finalized a new documentation system. It's all online and it's open. It's very easy to navigate. It's with very specific information for an end user, or if you're an admin, or if you're the partner who's implementing, or if you want to see guides and how-tos on how to do a specific scenario as a user on look and feel. So it's very easy to navigate. You always have a navigation pane on the left side for a high-level overview of the content, and then on the right-hand side you actually have your page navigation, where you can see highlighted where you are in the page, and you can just go through the application from page to page, or just quickly look something up. How do I work with Gantt charts? So you just start to type any search string, and it will show you what kind of components it has. Let's say I want to have a look on Gantt charts. Okay, how do I load a Gantt chart in my application? And it will immediately jump to that specific page, and it will teach you, okay, this is how you load your Gantt charts and how you work with it. You can put bookmarks again on this, and you can share that as well. So this is something that may be very helpful in the future. It will be released by the end of the year, made available by the end of the year in English and in German, and we will go on translating it in more languages as the market requires. You will also insert feedback buttons in here. So if you do have specific feedback on specific issues, that will automatically be escalated towards our product owners and development teams, so we can keep a very tight loop with all of you. Good. Well, that was the main thing, or the main things I wanted to show you all today. Thank you all for your time and for following this webinar. If you do have very specific other questions that you don't feel comfortable asking now, just shoot me an email afterwards, and I'm very happy to set up a bespoke session with you or your customers to go through them. We'll send you a link with the recording of today's session, so you can review it if you want, or share it with other people within the business. Good. You may all expect a newsletter soon with the release of the extension in AL, our official GA version of that extension, as well as with the announcement for the documentation as some other small features that we have added. Well, thank you, and with that, have a good day and have a great weekend ahead, all of you.
Yeah, have a great weekend yourself as well.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.